The morning sun cast long shadows across the military base as 17-year-old Sarah Martinez stepped through the main gate for the first time. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the polished concrete floors as she navigated through corridors filled with uniformed personnel who barely glanced her way. She clutched a manila folder containing documents that had taken her months to gather, each paper representing a small victory in her quest to join the elite sniper training program. Sarah had grown up in a small ranch town where hunting wasn't just a hobby, but a necessity for many families. Her father, Miguel Martinez, had been a decorated Marine who lost his life in overseas service when she was only 12. Her mother, Elena, worked double shifts at the local diner to keep their small household afloat. The rifle range behind their modest home had become Sarah's sanctuary, where she spent countless hours perfecting her aim with her father's old hunting rifle. What started as a way to help put food on the table by hunting deer and rabbits had evolved into something extraordinary. Sarah possessed a natural steadiness and focus that even seasoned hunters in their community had never witnessed. By age 15, she could consistently hit targets at distances that amazed local shooting club members. Her reputation spread through the small town and eventually reached the ears of a retired sergeant who suggested she consider military service. The idea had seemed impossible at first. Military snipers were elite soldiers, mostly men, who underwent years of rigorous training. But Sarah's determination, fueled by her desire to honor her father's memory and provide better opportunities for her family, drove her to research every possible pathway into the program. She discovered that exceptional civilian marksmen could sometimes qualify for specialized training if they met certain criteria and passed extensive evaluations. Colonel James Harrison had been running sniper training programs for over 2 decades. His office walls were covered with photographs of successful graduates, commendations, and memorabilia from various military operations. He had seen thousands of recruits come through his program, but very few civilians, and certainly no teenage girls from small farming communities. When his assistant informed him that someone was waiting to discuss entry into the sniper program, he assumed it would be another former military personnel seeking advanced training. The knock on his door interrupted his review of training schedules. "Enter," he called out, not looking up from his paperwork. When he finally raised his eyes, he saw a small-framed girl with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing jeans and a faded t-shirt. She stood straight with her shoulders back, but her hands trembled slightly as she held her folder. "Sir, my name is Sarah Martinez. I'm here to request evaluation for your sniper training program," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. Colonel Harrison leaned back in his chair, a smile spreading across his weathered face. He had heard many ambitious requests over the years, but this was certainly unique. "Young lady, I think you might be in the wrong building. The General Recruitment Office is across the base. They can help you with basic enlistment procedures." Sarah remained standing at attention. "With respect, sir, I believe this is exactly where I need to be. I have documentation of my shooting abilities, and I meet the minimum requirements for civilian evaluation." She opened her folder and placed several papers on his desk, including shooting competition scorecards, letters of recommendation from local law enforcement, and records from regional marksmanship contests. The colonel glanced at the papers with amused skepticism. The scores listed were indeed impressive, but he had seen many sport shooters who excelled in controlled environments struggle dramatically when faced with real tactical scenarios. "Miss Martinez, do you understand what military snipers actually do? This isn't about hitting paper targets at a county fair. We're talking about life and death situations, extreme physical demands, and psychological pressures that have broken grown men with years of military experience." Sarah nodded respectfully. "Yes, sir. I understand the gravity and difficulty of the role. But I also understand that accuracy, patience, and mental discipline are fundamental requirements, and I believe I possess these qualities. I'm asking for the opportunity to prove myself through your evaluation process, not for any special treatment. Colonel Harrison picked up one of the score sheets, noting that she had achieved perfect scores in several competitions against experienced adult shooters. Despite his skepticism, he had to admit the numbers were remarkable. However, his experience told him that natural talent alone was nowhere near sufficient for military sniper operations. "Let me explain something to you," he said, standing up and walking to the window that overlooked the training grounds. "Every year, hundreds of highly trained soldiers apply for our program. Most of them have served multiple deployments, have extensive combat experience, and have already proven themselves under fire. Of those hundreds, maybe 20 make it through the entire program. Of those 20, perhaps 5 become truly exceptional snipers." He turned back to face her. "These men have spent years building the physical strength, mental toughness, and tactical knowledge required for this role. They understand military protocol, weapon systems, ballistics, weather conditions, surveillance techniques, and countless other factors that determine success or failure in the field. What you're asking for is essentially to skip over years of foundational military training and jump directly into one of our most specialized programs." Sarah listened carefully to every word, understanding the logic of his argument, but remaining convinced that she deserved at least a chance to prove herself. "Colonel Harrison, I understand that my background is different from typical candidates, but exceptional circumstances sometimes produce exceptional results. I'm not asking to skip any requirements or evaluations. I'm asking to be held to exactly the same standards as every other candidate." The colonel returned to his desk and sat down, studying the young woman before him. Her composure was impressive, he had to admit. Many seasoned soldiers would have been intimidated by his explanation, but she seemed to absorb the information without losing confidence. Still, the idea of allowing a teenage civilian girl into a program designed for elite military personnel seemed almost absurd. "Miss Martinez, even if we were to consider your request, the physical demands alone would likely eliminate you within the first week. Our candidates must be able to carry heavy equipment across difficult terrain, maintain shooting positions for hours in uncomfortable conditions, and perform under extreme physical stress. The mental aspects are equally challenging. Can you honestly tell me you're prepared for scenarios where human lives depend on your decisions?" Sarah met his gaze directly. "Sir, I grew up on a ranch where physical work was a daily requirement. I've spent entire days tracking animals across rough terrain, maintained shooting positions for hours waiting for the right moment, and yes, I've had to make difficult decisions about taking shots that would determine whether my family had food on the table. I understand these aren't identical situations, but they've prepared me for many of the challenges you're describing." She paused briefly before continuing. "As for the responsibility aspect, my father taught me from an early age that a firearm is never a toy, and that every shot fired carries serious consequences. I've never taken that lightly, and I never will." The colonel found himself slightly impressed by her thoughtful responses, though he remained convinced this was ultimately a waste of time. He had built his reputation on producing successful snipers, not on taking risks with unlikely candidates. Still, something about her quiet confidence and obvious preparation made him consider her request more seriously than he had initially intended. "Let me ask you this," he said, leaning forward. "Why do you want this? Really want this? There are many paths to military service that would be more appropriate for someone with your background. Why specifically pursue the most demanding and specialized role we offer?" Sarah's expression softened slightly as she thought about her answer. "My father died serving his country, and I've always wanted to honor his sacrifice by serving as well. But beyond that, I genuinely believe this is where I can make the most meaningful contribution. I have a natural ability that I've worked hard to develop, and I think it would be a waste not to use it in service of something important. If I can help protect other soldiers or complete missions that keep people safe, then all the challenges and difficulties would be worthwhile. Colonel Harrison stood up again and walked around his desk, stopping directly in front of her. At 6 feet tall, he towered over her small frame, but she didn't step back or show any signs of intimidation. "Miss Martinez, I appreciate your dedication, and your scores are genuinely impressive for civilian competition. However, I have a responsibility to this program and to the soldiers who depend on our graduates. I cannot in good conscience recommend someone for evaluation who lacks the basic military foundation necessary for success." He softened his tone slightly. "I strongly encourage you to consider regular enlistment first. Spend a few years learning military basics, prove yourself in that environment, and then we can revisit this conversation. That would be the appropriate path forward." Sarah nodded politely but remained standing in place. "Colonel, with respect, I understand your concerns, but I'm not asking for recommendations or endorsements. I'm asking for the opportunity to fail or succeed based on my own performance. If I don't meet your standards during evaluation, then I'll accept that result and pursue other options. But if I do meet those standards, despite my unconventional background, wouldn't that be exactly the kind of exceptional candidate worth developing?" The colonel had to suppress another smile at her persistence. In truth, her determination reminded him of some of his most successful graduates, though he still couldn't see past the obvious obstacles her age and background presented. "Miss Martinez, I admire your confidence, but confidence alone doesn't qualify someone for this program. The liability issues alone would be significant if we allowed an untrained civilian into our training environment." Sarah reached into her folder and produced one final document. "Sir, I've already researched the legal aspects. With proper waivers and parental consent, civilian evaluation is within your program's authority. I've also spoken with my mother about this decision, and she supports my pursuit of this opportunity." Colonel Harrison took the paper she offered and read through the legal research she had compiled. To his surprise, her information was accurate and thorough. The regulations did allow for exceptional civilian candidates to undergo evaluation, though the provision was rarely used and had been designed primarily for former military personnel from other countries or retired law enforcement with specialized skills. "You've certainly done your homework," he acknowledged. "But understand that even if the legal framework exists, the practical challenges remain enormous. Our evaluation process is designed to test people who already have military training and experience. You would be starting from a significant disadvantage." Sarah nodded. "I understand that, sir. But I'm confident that my shooting skills and determination can overcome those disadvantages. I'm not asking for any modifications to your evaluation process or any special consideration. Judge me by exactly the same standards you use for everyone else." The colonel sat back down and studied her face carefully. Her composure remained steady, and her answers had been thoughtful and well-prepared. Despite his strong reservations, he found himself curious about what she might actually be capable of. In his experience, the most successful snipers often possessed an inner calm and focus that couldn't be taught, qualities that this young woman seemed to demonstrate even in this stressful conversation. "Miss Martinez, let me be absolutely clear about what you're requesting. Our initial evaluation includes weapons proficiency tests, physical fitness requirements, psychological assessments, and tactical scenario simulations. These tests are designed to challenge experienced soldiers, and the failure rate is extremely high even among qualified candidates." Sarah straightened her posture further. "I understand completely, sir. I'm prepared for those challenges." Colonel Harrison shook his head slowly, still finding it difficult to believe he was having this conversation. "Against my better judgment and despite serious doubts about the wisdom of this decision, I'm going to allow you to attempt our preliminary evaluation. This is not an acceptance into the program, and it certainly doesn't guarantee anything beyond a chance to demonstrate whether you're completely out of your depth or if you might possibly have some potential." For the first time since entering his office, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Thank you, sir. That's all I'm asking for." The colonel stood and extended his hand. "Report here next Monday at 0600 hours, bring appropriate athletic clothing, and be prepared for a very long day. And Miss Martinez, don't make me regret this decision." As Sarah shook his hand and gathered her papers, Colonel Harrison couldn't help but chuckle quietly at the absurdity of the situation. In 20 years of running this program, he had never encountered anyone quite like her. Whether this would prove to be an inspiring success story or an embarrassing mistake remained to be seen, but he had to admit his curiosity was piqued. After she left his office, he sat down and made a note in her file. "Civilian applicant, exceptional competition scores, questionable practical readiness, approved for preliminary evaluation despite significant reservations. This will either be remarkable or disastrous." Monday morning arrived with a thick layer of fog hanging over the training grounds, creating an atmosphere that felt both mysterious and foreboding. Sarah had barely slept the night before, spending hours researching military terminology and procedures she might encounter. She arrived at the base 30 minutes early, wearing simple athletic clothing and carrying a small backpack with water and energy bars. The preliminary evaluation area buzzed with activity as a dozen candidates prepared for testing. Sarah immediately noticed she was not only the youngest person present by several years, but also the only woman, and obviously the only civilian. The other candidates were seasoned military personnel with impressive backgrounds: Army Rangers, Marines with multiple deployments, Navy personnel with specialized training, and Air Force members with technical expertise. Master Sergeant Rodriguez, who supervised the initial evaluations, did a double-take when he saw Sarah among the candidates. He consulted his clipboard, confirmed her name was indeed on the list, and approached her with obvious confusion. "Miss Martinez, are you here to observe the evaluation process?" Sarah stood at attention as she had practiced. "No, sir. I'm here to participate in the evaluation." Sergeant Rodriguez glanced around at the other candidates, who had begun to take notice of the conversation. Several exchanged amused glances and whispered comments. "Miss, I think there might be some confusion. This is a preliminary evaluation for our advanced sniper training program. These tests are designed for military personnel with extensive experience." Before Sarah could respond, Colonel Harrison appeared and addressed the sergeant. "Martinez is here on my authorization. She'll be participating in all standard evaluation procedures without modification." His tone made it clear that no further discussion was welcome. The sergeant nodded reluctantly and addressed all the candidates. "Gentlemen and lady, today's evaluation consists of 4 main components. First, physical fitness assessment, including endurance, strength, and agility tests. Second, basic weapons handling and accuracy assessment. Third, tactical scenario simulations. Fourth, psychological evaluation and interviews. As the group moved toward the physical training area, Sarah overheard conversations between other candidates discussing their military backgrounds and previous training experiences. One Army Ranger mentioned serving 3 tours in Afghanistan. A Marine talked about specialized urban combat training. A Navy SEAL candidate described underwater demolition experience. Sarah remained quiet, focusing on preparing herself mentally for the challenges ahead. The physical fitness assessment began with a 2-mile run across varied terrain. Sarah had always been a strong runner from her ranch work and had spent weeks specifically training for this evaluation. She maintained a steady pace and finished in the middle of the group, which surprised both the evaluators and other candidates who had expected her to struggle immediately. Next came strength and agility tests, including push-ups, pull-ups, rope climbing, and obstacle course navigation. While Sarah wasn't the strongest candidate, her ranch background had given her functional strength and flexibility that served her well. She completed every requirement within acceptable parameters, though she noticed some candidates shaking their heads in apparent disbelief. During a brief rest period, Staff Sergeant Chen, one of the other candidates, approached her. "Look, no offense, but are you sure you understand what you're getting into here? This is just the beginning, and it only gets harder from here. Maybe you should consider starting with basic military training first." Sarah appreciated his tone, which seemed genuinely concerned rather than condescending. "I understand this is unusual, but I'm committed to seeing this through." "I appreciate your concern, though." The weapons assessment began after lunch, and this was where Sarah's true abilities first became evident. The testing included handling various rifle systems, understanding ballistics principles, and demonstrating accuracy at multiple distances under different conditions. While other candidates had experience with military weapons, many were generalists who had focused more on combat operations than precision shooting. Sarah's performance was immediately noticeable. Her natural steadiness, combined with years of dedicated practice, allowed her to achieve scores that ranked among the highest in the group. More importantly, her understanding of wind conditions, bullet trajectory, and environmental factors impressed the evaluating instructors who had expected her to struggle with these technical aspects. Captain Williams, the lead weapons instructor, observed her carefully during the assessment. After watching her consistently hit targets that some experienced soldiers missed, he pulled her aside. "Martinez, those are some impressive scores. Where exactly did you learn to shoot like that?" Sarah explained her background hunting and competing in civilian marksmanship contests. Captain Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Civilian competition can teach excellent fundamentals, but military applications involve different challenges. We'll see how you handle tactical scenarios tomorrow." The psychological evaluation took place in a quiet office building where Dr. Patricia Foster, a military psychologist, conducted individual interviews with each candidate. Sarah's session lasted over an hour and covered everything from her motivations and family background to hypothetical scenarios involving life and death decisions. "Sarah, can you tell me about a time when you had to make a difficult decision under pressure?" Dr. Foster asked, taking notes throughout their conversation. Sarah thought carefully before responding. "Last year, I was hunting alone when I came across a poacher illegally killing deer on our neighbor's property. I had to decide whether to confront him, call authorities, or simply observe and report. I chose to document what I saw from a distance and report it to the sheriff. The poacher was arrested later, and the evidence I gathered was crucial for prosecution." Dr. Foster probed deeper into Sarah's ability to handle stress, her understanding of military hierarchy, and her emotional resilience. Despite her youth, Sarah's responses demonstrated maturity and thoughtfulness that impressed the psychologist. The second day focused on tactical scenario simulations designed to test decision-making, teamwork, and adaptability under pressure. Candidates worked in pairs to complete missions involving target identification, communication protocols, and strategic positioning. Sarah was paired with Corporal Davis, a Marine with 6 years of experience who had initially been skeptical about working with a civilian. Their first scenario involved identifying and engaging multiple targets in a simulated urban environment while avoiding civilian casualties. Sarah's patience and careful observation allowed her to spot targets that Davis initially missed, while his tactical knowledge helped coordinate their movements and communication. "Damn, Martinez," Davis whispered during one exercise. "You've got eyes like a hawk. I've been doing this for years, and you're picking up things I'm missing." The partnership proved effective, and their combined performance ranked second among all candidate pairs. Davis's initial skepticism transformed into genuine respect as he witnessed Sarah's abilities firsthand. The third day included advanced weapons training with equipment Sarah had never used before. Military-grade rifles with sophisticated optics, laser rangefinders, ballistics computers, and communication systems were all new to her. However, her strong foundation in shooting fundamentals allowed her to adapt quickly to the new technology. Master Sergeant Torres, who conducted the advanced training, was particularly impressed by Sarah's ability to learn and adapt. Most civilians would be overwhelmed by these systems, he told Colonel Harrison privately. She's absorbing this information like a sponge and applying it effectively almost immediately. By the end of the week, Sarah had completed every aspect of the preliminary evaluation. While she hadn't excelled in every area, her performance was consistently solid and occasionally exceptional. More importantly, she had earned the respect of both instructors and fellow candidates who had initially dismissed her as an impossible outsider. The final day included individual meetings with Colonel Harrison to receive evaluation results. Sarah waited nervously outside his office, aware that her entire future depended on the next few minutes. When called in, she found the colonel reviewing a thick folder of test results and instructor reports. "Miss Martinez, sit down," he said without looking up. "I have to admit your performance this week has been surprising. Not surprising in the sense that you exceeded low expectations, but surprising in that you've challenged some of my fundamental assumptions about candidate selection." Sarah remained quiet, waiting for him to continue. "Your shooting scores were outstanding, among the highest we've seen from any candidate this year. Your physical performance was adequate, which frankly exceeded what I expected. Your psychological evaluation was quite positive, and your tactical adaptability showed genuine promise." Colonel Harrison finally looked up at her. "However, there are still significant gaps in your military knowledge, familiarity with protocols, and understanding of operational procedures. These deficiencies could be addressed through intensive training, but they represent real challenges." Sarah's heart raced as she tried to interpret whether this was leading toward acceptance or rejection. "Miss Martinez, against my initial judgment and despite continued reservations about this decision, I'm going to offer you a provisional acceptance into our program. This is conditional acceptance, meaning you'll be on probation throughout your training and must maintain performance standards that exceed those required of other candidates." Sarah felt a surge of excitement, but kept her expression composed. "Thank you, sir. I understand the conditions, and I'm prepared for the additional expectations." Colonel Harrison held up his hand. "Before you get too excited, understand that what you've completed this week was essentially a screening process. The actual training program is significantly more demanding. You'll be competing against candidates who not only pass this evaluation, but also have years of military experience to draw upon." He stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the training grounds where new candidates were already preparing for the next evaluation session. "Sarah, I'm taking a considerable professional risk by accepting you into this program. My reputation and the program's credibility depend on the success of our graduates. If you fail, it reflects poorly on my judgment. If you succeed, it could change how we think about candidate selection in the future." Sarah stood as well. "Colonel Harrison, I understand the pressure you're under and the risk you're taking. I won't let you down." The colonel turned back to her with a slight smile. "I hope you're right, Miss Martinez. Report for training next Monday at 500 hours. Be prepared for the most challenging experience of your life. And Sarah, the real test starts now." As Sarah left his office, she felt a mixture of triumph and trepidation. She had achieved something that had seemed impossible just weeks before, but she also understood that the most difficult challenges lay ahead. Walking across the base, she noticed other personnel looking at her with curiosity and speculation. Word of the teenage civilian girl joining sniper training had begun to spread throughout the base. That evening, Sarah called her mother to share the news. Elena Martinez cried with joy and pride, remembering her husband's dreams of military service and seeing them fulfilled in an unexpected way through their daughter. "Mija, your father would be so proud of you," she said through her tears. "But promise me you'll be careful, and remember that you don't have to prove anything to anyone except yourself." Sarah spent the weekend preparing both practically and mentally for the intensive training ahead. She researched military procedures, practiced physical exercises, and most importantly, visualized herself succeeding despite the odds against her. She understood that many people expected her to fail, and some probably hoped she would, but she was determined to prove that exceptional ability could emerge from unexpected places. As she lay in bed Sunday night, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this point and the incredible opportunity that lay ahead. Tomorrow would begin the next chapter of a story that had already defied conventional expectations, and she was ready to write it with her own determination and skill. The Advanced Sniper Training Program officially began on a crisp October morning with 22 carefully selected candidates assembled in Classroom A. Sarah noticed immediately that the group was smaller and more elite than the preliminary evaluation participants. These were the survivors of multiple screening processes, each representing the top tier of military marksmen from their respective branches. Colonel Harrison addressed the group with unusual formality. "Gentlemen and lady, welcome to the most demanding training program our military offers. Over the next 12 weeks, you will be pushed beyond what you believed were your limits. Most of you will not complete this program. Those who do will join an elite group of professionals who represent the highest standards of precision, dedication, and tactical excellence." The training schedule was immediately overwhelming. Days began at 4:30 a.m. and often extended past 10 p.m. Physical conditioning, weapons training, ballistics study, meteorology, camouflage techniques, surveillance methods, communication protocols, and tactical planning consumed every waking hour. Sleep became a precious commodity, and the pressure was relentless. Sarah quickly discovered that her biggest challenge wasn't shooting accuracy or physical demands, but rather the accumulated military knowledge that other candidates took for granted. While they instinctively understood radio procedures, unit structures, and operational terminology, she had to consciously learn each concept from scratch while simultaneously mastering the specialized sniper skills. During the first week, Instructor Sergeant Major Patterson took the group through advanced ballistics calculations. The mathematics involved accounting for wind speed, humidity, temperature, barometric pressure, altitude, and target movement across distances exceeding 1,000 meters. While Sarah's shooting instincts were excellent, translating those instincts into precise calculations proved challenging. "Martinez!" Patterson called out during one session. "If your target is 1,200 meters away, moving left to right at approximately 3 map, with a crosswind of 8 map from the northwest, temperature 45 degrees, humidity 60%, what's your holdover adjustment?" Sarah worked through the calculation methodically, applying formulas she had memorized the night before. Her answer was close but not exact, earning a sharp correction from Patterson. "Close doesn't count in this business, Martinez. Lives depend on precision, not approximations." After class, several candidates approached Sarah with offers to help her catch up on military basics. Chief Petty Officer Anderson, a Navy SEAL with extensive combat experience, became an unofficial mentor. "Look, kid, you've got natural shooting ability that most of us would kill for, but you're drowning in the technical stuff. Let me help you with some shortcuts and memory techniques that might speed up your learning." These study sessions became crucial to Sarah's survival in the program. While other candidates could relax or sleep, she spent additional hours each night absorbing military knowledge with Anderson's guidance. The sacrifice was exhausting, but gradually, her understanding began to catch up to her abilities. Week 3 brought the first major elimination. 5 candidates were dismissed based on overall performance rankings, leaving 17 remaining. Sarah had managed to stay in the program, but barely. Her shooting scores remained among the highest in the group, but deficiencies in other areas had brought her overall ranking dangerously close to elimination. Colonel Harrison called her into his office that Friday afternoon. "Sarah, I'm going to be direct with you. Your shooting performance continues to be exceptional, but your academic and tactical scores are struggling. You're currently ranked 15th out of 17 remaining candidates. If this trend continues, you won't make it through the next elimination round. Sarah sat quietly, absorbing the harsh reality of her situation. However, the colonel continued, I've been reviewing your improvement trajectory, and your learning curve is actually quite impressive for someone without military background. The question is whether you can accelerate that improvement enough to survive the remaining weeks. Sarah met his gaze directly. Sir, what specifically do I need to focus on to improve my ranking? Colonel Harrison consulted her evaluation files. Your weakness is in tactical planning and operational procedures. You understand shooting, but you don't yet think like a military sniper in terms of mission planning, threat assessment, and strategic integration. These skills are crucial for real-world operations. That weekend, Sarah approached Staff Sergeant Mitchell, who taught tactical operations and requested additional training. Mitchell was initially reluctant to provide extra instruction, but Sarah's determination impressed him. Martinez, I'll work with you Sunday afternoons, but understand that this is above and beyond what I'm required to do. Don't waste my time if you're not completely committed. The extra tactical training sessions proved transformative. Mitchell pushed Sarah through complex scenario planning, teaching her to think beyond individual shots and consider entire mission profiles. How does a sniper support larger operations? How do you plan ingress and egress routes? What factors determine target prioritization? How do you adapt when missions change unexpectedly? Week 6 brought another elimination round that reduced the group to 12 candidates. Sarah had managed to improve her ranking to 10th place, keeping her in the program, but still in a precarious position. More importantly, her tactical understanding had begun to integrate with her natural shooting abilities, creating a more complete skill set. The training intensified further as they moved into advanced field exercises. Week 7 involved a 5-day simulation where candidates operated in pairs across 50 square miles of rough terrain, completing various mission objectives while being hunted by opposing forces. Sarah was paired with Captain Brooks, an Army Ranger with multiple special operations deployments. Their mission involved surveillance of a simulated enemy facility, gathering intelligence, and then eliminating specific high-value targets when ordered. The exercise tested everything they had learned about camouflage, patience, communication, and precision shooting under realistic stress conditions. For 3 days, Sarah and Brooks maintained hidden positions while observing the facility and reporting enemy movements. Sarah's patience, developed through years of hunting, proved valuable during the long hours of motionless surveillance. On the 4th day, they received orders to engage 2 specific targets at a simulated enemy meeting. The shots required were challenging, 750 meters through moderate wind, with targets appearing only briefly in windows before disappearing again. Sarah's first shot was perfect, eliminating the primary target instantly. The secondary target appeared 30 seconds later in a different location, requiring rapid recalculation and repositioning. Her second shot was equally precise. "Holy shit, Martinez," Brooks whispered as they prepared to evacuate their position. "Those were some of the cleanest shots I've ever seen. You just saved our entire mission." Their performance ranking for the field exercise was first place, which significantly improved Sarah's overall standing in the program. More importantly, she had demonstrated the ability to perform under realistic pressure while integrating all aspects of sniper training. Week 9 eliminated 3 more candidates, leaving 9 finalists competing for 6 graduation slots. Sarah had climbed to 6th place in overall rankings, ensuring her position in the final group, but still needing strong performance in the concluding evaluations. The final test was scheduled for week 12 and would determine final rankings among graduates. This evaluation involved the most challenging shooting scenarios the program offered, designed to identify the absolute best performers among an already elite group. Candidates would face shots at maximum range under difficult conditions, with scoring based not just on accuracy, but also on speed, adaptability, and tactical decision-making. On the morning of final evaluations, Sarah felt a mixture of confidence and nervous anticipation. Over 3 months of intensive training had transformed her from a talented civilian shooter into a skilled military sniper. But this final test would determine whether she could truly excel at the highest level. Colonel Harrison addressed the 9 remaining candidates. Today's evaluation will determine your final program ranking and specialty assignments upon graduation. You'll face 5 shooting challenges of increasing difficulty, followed by a comprehensive tactical scenario. Your performance today will be compared against all program graduates from the past 10 years to establish historical ranking. The first challenge involved precision shooting at 800 meters in calm conditions, a baseline test of fundamental accuracy. All 9 candidates performed well, with Sarah achieving a perfect score alongside 3 others. The second challenge increased distance to 1,200 meters and added moderate wind conditions. Sarah's experience reading natural wind patterns from her hunting background proved advantageous. While some candidates struggled with wind calculations, she trusted her instincts and achieved scores that ranked second in the group. The third challenge was the most demanding yet attempted in the program's history. Targets were positioned at 2,500 meters in gusty, variable wind conditions. Candidates would have 1 shot at each of 5 targets, with scoring based on precision and time between shots. This distance pushed beyond the effective range most snipers would ever attempt in actual operations. As Sarah prepared for her attempt, she felt a strange calmness settle over her. The technical knowledge she had struggled to master early in the program now felt natural and integrated with her shooting instincts. She studied the wind patterns carefully, made her calculations, and began engaging targets with methodical precision. Her first shot struck center mass. The second shot, adjusted for a wind shift she had detected, was equally accurate. By her fourth shot, other candidates and instructors were watching her performance with obvious interest. Her fifth and final shot at this extreme range was another perfect hit. Instructor Chief Warrant Officer Thompson, who supervised the range, announced her score with obvious surprise. "Martinez, perfect score at 1,500 meters. That's the first perfect score we've recorded at this distance since the program began using this protocol." The fourth challenge introduced moving targets at 1,000 meters, a test of tracking ability, timing, and predictive shooting. Sarah's hunting experience had prepared her well for this scenario. Tracking moving deer had taught her to anticipate movement patterns and time shots for optimal precision. Again, her performance was exceptional. While other highly skilled candidates achieved good scores, Sarah's natural ability to read and predict target movement set her apart. Her tracking was smooth, her timing was perfect, and her shots consistently found their marks. By this point, the gathered instructors were discussing Sarah's performance among themselves. These were professionals who had trained hundreds of elite snipers, and they were witnessing something unprecedented. The final shooting challenge was designed to test absolute limits of skill and composure. Targets at 1,600 meters in difficult wind conditions, with candidates required to engage 5 targets as quickly as possible while maintaining precision. This challenge pushed beyond realistic operational requirements and was intended to identify exceptional candidates who might excel in the most demanding future assignments. Sarah approached this final test with complete focus. Everything she had learned, practiced, and absorbed over 12 weeks of training converged in these crucial minutes. She felt her father's presence, remembering his stories about military service and the importance of excellence under pressure. Her first shot at 1,600 meters was a clean hit. The second shot required adjustment for changing wind conditions, which she executed flawlessly. By her third shot, absolute silence had fallen over the range as instructors and candidates watched her performance. Her fourth shot maintained the same precision. As she prepared for her fifth and final shot, Sarah felt time slow down as complete focus took over. The shot was perfect. Chief Thompson checked and rechecked the target verification system before announcing her results. Martinez, perfect score at 1,600 meters in difficult conditions. This is the best shooting performance in program history. Colonel Harrison approached the firing line with an expression of amazement mixed with professional pride. Miss Martinez, what you've just accomplished is extraordinary. You've not only set a new program record, but you've exceeded the best recorded performances of any sniper in our military's history at these distances and conditions. The tactical scenario that concluded the evaluation required comprehensive mission planning, target analysis, and adaptive problem-solving under time pressure. Sarah's performance was solid and demonstrated the military thinking she had worked so hard to develop. While not her strongest area, she performed competently and maintained her overall program leadership. Final rankings were announced that afternoon. Sarah had graduated first in her class with the highest overall scores in program history. Her shooting performance had been unprecedented, while her tactical abilities, though developed later, had reached professional standards. As Colonel Harrison handed her the program completion certificate, he shook his head with a smile. Sarah, when you first walked into my office 6 months ago, I thought I was humoring an ambitious kid with unrealistic dreams. Today, you've proven that exceptional ability can emerge from anywhere, and that my preconceptions about candidate selection were limiting our program's potential. He paused before continuing. Your performance today will be studied and referenced for years to come. You've not only succeeded despite the odds against you, but you've redefined what success in this program can look like. Sarah accepted the certificate with quiet pride, thinking of her father and the journey that had brought her to this moment. The girl who had been dismissed as an impossible candidate had become the standard by which future snipers would be measured. Word of her achievement spread quickly throughout the base and beyond. The story of the teenage girl who had surpassed every SEAL sniper record became legendary within military circles, inspiring a new generation of candidates to pursue excellence regardless of their background or the expectations of others. Years later, Sarah would go on to serve with distinction in various military operations, but she would always remember that first day in Colonel Harrison's office when he laughed at what seemed like an impossible request. That laughter had motivated her to prove that impossible dreams sometimes become extraordinary realities for those willing to pursue them with absolute dedication.